Language learners don't understand what immersion means, and we need to stop talking about it as though we do, but it took me to go to Sweden and talk to someone in Japan for me to realize this. My name's Lamont, I've been learning Swedish for a long time, I've learned some other languages on and off during that time, and I make these videos to tell you what I learn along the way, so if that sounds good, hit the subscribe button and let's talk. Tjena chicos! What is immersion in a language? Well, a lot of people would say it's living in a place where that language is spoken. But others, particularly regulars to this hobby, probably just thought, whoa, that's not necessarily immersion. Sure, maybe not for me and you, but for a lot of people, that is the correct answer. Living in a place where the language is spoken all the time so that you have to hear it and particularly use it. Immersion. Now, are they wrong? Or are we wrong? Or is the term unclear? I believe it's the last one. Just saying immersion is ambiguous at best. This is a big problem because when I asked you guys to give me one word that describes how you learn a language, do you want to guess what the most popular answer was? Tears. A couple of people said tears, but the most common answer was immersion. So it is a problem that we don't even agree on what it means. I mean, as far as I know, the bicycle community is not in a disagreement about what wheel means. Well, I mean, maybe they are, but they shouldn't be. They probably have that pretty sorted. Defining the word immersion is important because ambiguous terms lead to ambiguous definitions and unclear instructions on how to learn a language. In brief, the language learning community should all mean the same thing when we use terms that are that prevalent in the language learning space.
The first thing is immersion.
So I'm going to try to help using a text message that I got from my brother. While I was in Sweden, I got this message from my brother who was in Japan. Now, I don't want to make it sound like we're always in different parts of the world because we both have like private jets or anything. We're not normally overseas. It was weird that we both were at the same time. But his text said, I've been thinking about this immersion that you talk about. What level would a decently natural language learner need to already be at before the immersion worked? And when I first read that, I was like, what? Because simplified to me, what that says is, how good do you need to be at the language before you can then learn the language? It's like, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Bro, lay off the sake. So confused, I kept reading, and with the context of the rest of the message, I was like, oh, right, you mean how much of the language would you already need to know before being in the country would be an effective way to keep learning the language? Which is a much more sensible question than the one I thought he was asking, but not within the scope of a 12-minute video. But it struck me then and there that the non-hardcore language learning community, the 99% of language-interested people out there, like my brother, are using the term immersion very differently to the way that we language learning enthusiasts are using it. My point being that if my own brother is misunderstanding what I mean by immersion, then at least half of what any casual language learner reads or hears out there is probably being misconstrued. Like, imagine the bicycle equivalent. It would be pretty difficult to teach someone about cycling if every time you said wheel, they heard you say handlebars. In my opinion, we should not say immersion. So what should we say? Well, I propose two different terms. 1, lifestyle language immersion, and 2, cognitive language immersion. Both lifestyle and cognitive language immersion are super important if you want to learn a language to fluency, and something that I've found helpful to boost both of those is today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. There is nothing like being in a place where the language you're learning is spoken. But the next best thing is having access to all the same content as the people you're going to be talking to, which is exactly what Surfshark allows you to do, which is why anyone learning a language, whether you're just starting out or at an already advanced level, should give it a try. People in Sweden were often impressed by the fact that I knew about Swedish things that they knew about, the books that they read, the shows that they watch, and I was able to access a lot of that stuff with Surfshark. Surfshark is now also a full-on security suite with things like an alternative ID generator, a data breach alert, a fully featured antivirus, to name just a few of them. Plus, you're not limited to getting all this on just one device, because the one plan allows you to protect every device in your household, which is a really big deal. I recently got a laptop for the first time and I installed Surfshark straight away. I didn't need to worry about whether I'd go over some device limit because there isn't one. And maybe you don't believe me. I get it. You want to try it for yourself. Well, you can now do that risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Grab that with the link that I'll put in the description. Use code Lamont to get up to 4 months extra on what I believe is the best subscription a person can have other than a YouTube subscription to Days and Words. But after that, it's Surfshark VPN. So link in the description or at the top of the comments. Do it. Cool. Yeah. So we have lifestyle language immersion and cognitive language immersion. Now, the reason the word language is in there is that I don't want to create further confusion by just saying lifestyle immersion, which could be considered to be independent of the language. If we want to shorten the terms, we could say lifestyle LI and cognitive LI. So, lifestyle language immersion is what my brother was talking about. It's where you're living your life in a place where the language is spoken and attempting to do so using that language. And for the record, his message went on to describe how he'd tried to use Japanese, but it didn't work because his level wasn't sufficient, which is why he was asking me that. So, lifestyle LI is not talking about things like, let's say, a British person going on a gap year to Denmark and just speaking English the whole time because they can. Yes, they may be getting exposure to the Danish lifestyle, but since they're making no attempt to learn or speak Danish, it's not language immersion, hence the need for the word language in the term. And you might be wondering if lifestyle LI can be done outside of a country or region where that language is the default. Well, yes, with an asterisk, because what separates lifestyle LI from cognitive LI is that it must, by necessity, involve some language interaction between you and at least some other people who speak the language fluently. So there are certain environments where a low-key lifestyle language immersion is possible despite not being where you generally expect to find that language. I'm thinking of things like the all-Swedish gatherings that I've been to in Sydney. But speaking generally, the strongest and longest form of lifestyle LI will involve being in a country or region of a country where that language is standard. And remember, this is important because that's what 99% of casually language interested people would think that you meant by immersion, even if it's not actually what we meant. This is why I think there should be two different terms. Alright, so what's cognitive language immersion? Cognitive LI is exposing your brain in any way that you can or you want to the language in question. So you could be in the desert in Kenya, but if you're listening to an audiobook in Icelandic, then you're cognitively immersed in Icelandic. Have you ever heard someone say that this learning a language via immersion thing must be rubbish because what about all the people who live in the country for years and never learn the language? I've heard that argument, and it's flawed because it assumes that immersion is to do with your physical location. It's very possible to live in a country but get minimal lifestyle LI to the language of that country whilst continuing to be cognitively immersed in a different language. I think it's worth distinguishing between the two because yes, there is some overlap between cognitive language immersion and lifestyle language immersion, but by distinguishing between the two, not only can we be better language learners ourselves, but we can also be better at helping others to learn languages. There's a tendency, particularly among the 99%, the casual language learners, to overrate the importance and the expected results of lifestyle LI. A lot of people think that just moving to a place where the language is spoken is this one and done hack for perfect language acquisition. And I've even spoken to people who know that they're going to be moving to a particular country and haven't started learning the language because they use the excuse that when they get there, they'll just learn it perfectly anyway, and it's just not true. But because most people don't have that option but would love to have, I think it creates this kind of halo effect where they just think, oh, if I could just live in the country where the language is spoken, then everything would be great, and they can't imagine that any other learning method is effective. Cognitive language immersion is one such alternative, and I got a very good idea of exactly how far that can get you when I recently went to Sweden for the very first time after about 15 to 1800-ish hours of cognitive language immersion. And without wanting to regale you with tales of my Swedish prowess or whatever, suffice it to say that it works very, very well. And to the lifestyle LI purists who say that you have to be there to actually learn the language properly, I would say, yes, I sort of agree. There are benefits to being there and certainly to living there that are practically impossible to obtain any other way. But my experience in Sweden quashes the idea that you just can't learn a language sitting in your home on the other side of the world. Like learning a language from a different country, never gonna happen, so naive. That is not true, and I am not the first person to show this. Cognitive language immersion, done right, can result in proficiency that many people in that country interpret as you at least having lived there for some time, but if you're lucky, even being a native speaker. Okay, so if that's the case, then why even bother making the distinction? For two reasons. One, remember that to the 99%, when you say immersion, they hear living in the country, which means that when you say the way to learn a language is immersion, they will hear that as, sorry, unless you're gonna go and live in the country, you're not gonna be able to learn the language. That's not good, because that's not true. So instead, let's tell them about cognitive language immersion and what that is. And the other reason to make the distinction is that cognitive LI, as great as it is still not lifestyle LI. Cognitive is much better in some ways, but they're still pretty different. Now, in the perfect language learning world, we would all do both all the time. I would move to Sweden and I would keep getting cognitive LI and lifestyle LI, but as many people do, I have things that prevent that. I have kids who go to school, I have a wife with a career, etc. So the big advantage of cognitive LI is accessibility. For most people in most studied languages, it's ready for you to jump into today. My brother, for example, would be able to cognitively immerse in Japanese to get good enough at Japanese so that the next time he went there, he might be able to get some lifestyle LI. But I said that in order to get really good at the language, I do think you need both. But it might not be for the reason that you think. See, lifestyle language immersion does this thing that is one of the weirdest and most interesting language learning discoveries I've ever made, but it's very difficult to put words around. So I've been working on a video for a very long time. Make sure you check it out because I think it will resonate and help you put a name to something that you've probably felt before. If the video is finished, I'll put it here. If it's not finished, then check out this video anyway. It's probably really good. Make sure you're subscribed and that you've hit the bell so that you don't miss any videos when they come out. Now that I've been to Sweden, my videos are going to be packed with goodness. I learned a lot while I was over there, but I'm still going to say, lo quiero.